What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Today we are going to talk about Pricketts Fort State Park. So Pricketts Fort State Park is a reconstructed early colonial fort located at the convergence of the Monongahela River and Pricketts Creek. Normally they do a lot of reenactments and recreations out there, along with some concerts and various other activities like that. Unfortunately, it's 2020, the year that has officially punched all of our social lives square in the jeans, and there wasn't a whole lot of that stuff going on, unfortunately. So today we're primarily going to talk about the Pricketts Fort Museum. They do have a very good colonial museum out there, along with go over some of the pictures I took and just the general history, and even go a little bit into Pricketts Fort as it's presented in Fallout 76. Construction of the original Pricketts Fort started in 1774 by Captain Job Prickett. It wasn't a military fort, it was actually a civilian refuge fort. In case the area was under threat of raids from natives, about 80 families in the general area would come to Pricketts Fort and fort up, which basically just meant they came to this area and stayed in the fort, brought supplies and animals and food and provisions with them, and would just stay at the fort until the threat had basically subsided. While the fort was never directly attacked in raids by natives, little skirmishes in between natives and colonialist scouts did happen from time to time. By the end of the 18th century, the need for forts like this had greatly subsided, and it wasn't until actually the 20th century that Pricketts Fort was reconstructed, and it's kind of a weird story. So essentially, in the early parts of the 20th century, West Virginia was exporting a lot of coal and a lot of timber from north central West Virginia. So in order to make that more viable, they needed to widen and deepen the Monongahela River. Unfortunately, by doing that, what it did was it increased the floodplain and essentially put the area where the original Pricketts Fort was located almost entirely within the new floodplain. This new floodplain mapping essentially put the entire area where the original fort was in the hands of the federal government. This included the Job Prickett House, which was a 19th century brick residence located near the fort. Basically, a group of people got together and encouraged the state of West Virginia to step in to prevent the destruction of the Job Prickett House. So, in a sense, that happened. The state government turned and asked the federal government if they could lease the property from them in order to make it into a state park. The Job Prickett House is located on the National Register of Historical Places in a West Virginia state park on land owned by the federal government. Also located near Pricketts Fort is the Prickett Family Cemetery, which not just has the grave of Jacob Prickett, but it also has the grave of one Colonel Zackquill Morgan, who is the founder and namesake of Morgantown, West Virginia. Now, Pricketts Fort also makes an appearance in Fallout 76, and in the game it is a historical recreation of the original fort. In-game, the reason for why the fort isn't built in its original location is they knew the fort existed, but they basically just moved it in order to put it closer to railroad tracks so it would be more accessible to tourists. Which is less weird than the actual history behind the fort, as far as the land changing hands and different agencies getting involved trying to claim it. Now, I was actually pretty impressed with the Pricketts Fort Museum itself and just the sheer amount of colonial history that it depicts and has within its walls. You also have several historical items from not just West Virginia history, but North Central West Virginia, Fairmont, Morgantown area history. So that about wraps up my trip out to Pricketts Fort State Park. This wasn't really a West Virginia history video, this wasn't really a Fallout 76 video, this wasn't really a West Virginia road trip video, because, well, 2020 has just kind of sucked. Definitely when things get a little bit back to normal and they start doing more reenactment stuff, more recreation stuff, they're allowed to have some crowds out there, they're allowed to start doing concerts and different things like that again, I'm definitely gonna have to go back out to Pricketts Fort State Park, make a weekend out of it. But yeah, it was a fun trip, and definitely if you're ever in the area, definitely check it out. I think they're getting ready to close for the season. But again, if you find yourself in the area, definitely check it out. And until next time, don't forget to stay wild and stay wonderful. And I will talk to you later.